Hey, I'm Steve, and welcome to the podcast today. Very excited, and we're doing one that is a podcast that's video. We're going to video it, and what we're going to do is put it on YouTube. But I'm sitting here with Kaleea, used to be Washington.
Yeah.
You had a big name change.
I did have a big name change.
Well, why?
And I must say, I'm happy to get rid of the Washington.
So what's your last name now?
Honey.
Okay.
Kaleea Honey. I got married 3 weeks ago.
I was there, I know.
You were there.
I was there. It's
You
very
were there.
exciting.
You saw me become a honey.
Yes, I did.
So.
I did. And Devin was just, I think he cried.
He did
so much
cry.
so he had snot running down his nose.
Did he really?
No, but it was pretty close.
He was
I think.
emotional.
He was very emotional.
Really emotional.
Very,
it was sweet. It was sweet.
Very emotional.
Yeah.
And then you had a great little time away.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
We went to South Africa.
Wow.
Cape Town.
Okay.
And it was amazing. And we saw penguins. Anytime I talk about it, I talk about the penguins.
You see, I'd be talking about the lions, but you talk about the penguins.
Talk
Why
about
is
the
that?
penguins, because you can see a lion at a local zoo.
Well, you can see a penguin at a zoo.
Where? Okay.
Portland,
Yeah,
probably.
you're right, actually.
Okay.
But, okay, you can see a penguin at a zoo, but people don't expect to see penguins in Africa.
You know, that's right. When you told me that there were penguins there, I thought that can't be.
Yeah, they're a South African penguin colony. They thrive in the weather. It's like tropical. It's nice.
Okay.
And people wouldn't know that. So that's what I enjoyed about it, was being able to see, I feel like, almost every animal on this continent. So
Yeah.
it was cool.
Okay. Excellent. And then I saw you posted one of a lion eating pork chop or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
it was a water buffalo leg.
Oh, water buffalo leg. But you had to stay in the vehicle. You couldn't get out, right?
No, we couldn't. It was
Yeah.
chowing. In fact, they told us that if we dropped our phones while taking pictures, they wouldn't get them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're on your own. Okay.
Yeah, you're on your own.
All right. Okay, good. All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
On your marriage and starting out here in life. So that's great.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question, Kaleea, and I thought we would talk about the things in our culture, society, in the church, outside the church, that tend to be divisive, that have separated people, made people angry, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I don't want to dwell on that part because I want to switch over and talk about the things that unify us, which I really want to give time to. But what do you think are let's just talk about what are the things that kind of really dividing us right now?
Divide us, yeah. I think that politics are divisive. That's like the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I also think that differences in opinion, like concerning healthcare and the vaccinations, is extremely divisive right now. I think that, even like a culture of a church can be divisive. Like somebody can feel like, I'm a Christian because I do it this way and you do it that way. So I think there's a lot that's divisive. I think music is even divisive sometimes. Like people, people can judge you for listening to like one genre of music or like thinking, you probably know it. Like you grew up when people were criticizing rock and roll, right?
Oh, yes. It made me feel old.
Yeah,
okay.
sorry,
yeah. So you can't have drums in the church.
Yeah, exactly.
Because drums are bad and they're evil.
Yeah.
And the harmonicas are evil and
exactly.
We
So
hopefully got past that right now.
yeah, so I feel like people are like that with other genres of music now, especially if you're a Christian. Like I've heard Christians say, "Oh, I don't listen to rap because blah blah blah." I won't get into that, but but I think that there's a lot that's divisive that I've dealt with personally. So yeah, there's a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with all those. You know, the politics things, the COVID things, masks.
Yeah, masks.
Yeah, I don't want to wear a mask. I want to wear a mask. And don't make me do this. You know, all those things are out there. There's no doubt about that. And those things are outside the church and they're inside the church too.
Yeah.
Right? Divisiveness over those, and very, very emotional things. And I think politics, like you said, is out there too. And then they're kind of like categories of that politics things, like the border and immigration, or critical race theory, or we could just name off a whole bunch of stuff that people are get upset about, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so many things out there I can't even keep up.
No, you can't.
I don't even, people ask me stuff and I go, I don't know, I never heard of that one.
Yeah.
That's a new one on me.
There's a new thing to be enraged about every day.
Yeah. Hey, the vaccine is the mark of the beast. I did a podcast on that.
Yeah.
Because somebody mentioned that to me, and I thought, I just need to cover that.
You're not a Christian if you get the vaccine, because now you've been marked.
You've been marked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those things. So what I thought of, there's so many things that we can focus on that would be negative and divisive. But what are things that Christians can focus on that drive unity and unify us? Mm-hmm. And one of those things is communion. And I want to talk about that here in a minute. But what are some other things that would really unite Christians? And do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think our values as believers, so to serve people who are underserved, to show up for our neighbor, to show up for our family members in need, to make the main thing, which is Jesus. I think those are things that are all unify us. Yeah,
I'm glad you said that, because I think there's this idea that if we serve one another, hey, that really can be something that we can all be on the same page about pretty quickly, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody's hurting, or somebody, somebody that lost their job, or somebody who fell and got hurt, they're in the hospital, things like that. Or somebody's got a severe case of COVID, so they need food brought to them. They have 4 little kids, mom and dad have COVID, things are up in the air, right? Mm-hmm. So I think those are things too. Yeah. I think baptism is one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So people get baptized, right? We're like, yeah.
Yeah. We all cheer each other on.
Yeah, yeah. So I think baptism is that way. And I think for me a little bit, being in a small group, in a community group. Yeah. Where we're together and we can actually have conversations like this with people and pray for one another. So I think the praying for one another can be a big part of that unity thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. So one thing that was brought to my attention by one of our colleagues here, Pastor John Green, is that we should focus on communion during our church service. Mm-hmm. Because that is really like you just said, it's all about Jesus. And communion is a way to do that, right? And it's a very visible way to say, hey, this is the time to put all that other stuff aside and just focus on communion. So how was communion done in the churches you grew up in?
I would say communion's pretty similar to the way that we do it here, which is the wafer and the juice and the plastic cup. Mm-hmm. I think the only main difference is that when we did communion and we would talk about Jesus' body broken for us, we'd actually break the wafer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then eat it. So, like, Christ's body was broken for us, break it, and then eat it as a way to remember that he was broken. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's the same. Yeah. And it's not done weekly. And I know that's something that's seasonal, but yeah.
So you grew up not doing it weekly?
We do it like once a month, or like first Sundays. Yeah.
I think a lot of churches have different traditions about that. Yeah. So the Christian church denomination, Christian church, Disciples of Christ, Church of Christ, really focused on doing it every week. And then Baptists did it quarterly, something like that, or monthly. They said, we don't want to do it all the time because it'll get routine and we'll forget what it means. That's part of the thinking there. And then, of course, if you're Roman Catholic or something similar, then you're going to do it every week. Yeah. Right? Mass. You're going to do the Mass every week. Right. So I grew up United Methodist, and I think we did it like 3 times a year. Wow. And you had to come up front and kneel. Wow. And then the pastor would give it to you, put it in your hand, as I remember. I was a little kid.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when you think about, when you're in church and communion is being taken, what do you think of?
I think about Jesus at the Last Supper, talking about how his body was getting ready to be broken for us and how he was getting ready to give his life for us. Think about the redemption of my sins.
So when we're thinking about those things, does it feel like we can leave that other stuff out of the room that's making us upset with our neighbors? And
yeah, I think so, because if you're thinking about Jesus, you're also thinking about how wretched you are. And so, like, the need to feel offended towards other people should kind of cease, because you realize, like, I'm a broken human being too. And, like, the people I'm surrounded with are also broken human beings. And the one thing that purifies us is Christ. So, like, who am I in that moment anyway to be upset at another person? We're all on the same playing field.
Yeah, I think there's so many things to contemplate during communion. And sometimes it's called the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
But I think there are many things that we can focus our minds on during that time, and as best we can leave all that other stuff, that other baggage outside the baggage terminal. Just throw it aside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to communion, some churches call it the Lord's Supper. I'm trying to think of other names that people use it. So anyway, we do the little cellophane thing where you peel it off. And that wafer's so small, I guess you could break it.
Yeah.
The ones that we use, right? But the Catholic Church has the view that Jesus is actually inside that bread. And that's called Transubstantiation. So what do you know about Transubstantiation?
So I know that Transubstantiation is basically the belief that the juice we drink is the blood of Christ, the literal blood of Christ, that it transforms into the blood of Christ, and that the bread we eat is the body of Christ, the literal body of Christ. And Christ's body and blood is present every time you do communion in that way.
Right. Yeah, I think you're spot on with Roman Catholic theology. I actually took a Roman Catholic theology course in seminary. I had to go interview a Catholic priest and spend time in the Catholic Church. Very interesting for a Protestant.
Yeah.
Anyway, so with this transubstantiation, I think some of the difficulties with this viewpoint is that you got Jesus Christ being sacrificed over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then if Jesus is resurrected from the dead and he is permanently in heaven, seated at the right hand of the Father in his body, how can we have him there and then his body spread all out? We have some problems with the Trinity all of a sudden.
Yeah.
The view of the Trinity with that.
Yeah.
With that view.
Yeah.
So in the Catholic Church, when the priest does the Mass, then it's transformed into the body and, in their viewpoint, transformed into the body and blood of Christ. And then, because they're taking very literally, when Jesus had I should have brought a loaf of bread in here.
Yeah.
When Jesus said to his disciples, "Hey, this is my body, just take this."
Yeah.
I doubt very seriously if they actually thought it was his body.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That would not, I don't think they ever understood it that way.
No.
Or when he said, "Hey, drink some of this wine, and we're not going to drink the fourth cup," because they had 4 cups in the Passover meal. "We're not going to drink this one until you're in the kingdom of heaven, but this is my blood." I don't think, there's no way they would have believed that was literally his blood right there.
As he was sitting right there.
Right, as he was sitting right there.
Yeah.
See, then
Yeah.
And so, and then when you get to 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about what we call the memorial view of communion, where we're remembering what Christ did, commemorating it, I guess you could say, but there's nowhere listed there that it's not even implied that the bread and the wine's turning into the body and blood of Christ.
Yeah,
it's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to thinking about all the celebrations in the Old Testament, the feasts, these national feasts, and they would celebrate like the Red Sea crossing or the Passover, and then other events. But it was, it was a celebration. They looked to the past to remember that God did something amazing, and it gave them hope for the future.
Right.
And I think it's the same way with communion. We see what Jesus did in the past. We can have forgiveness of sin, abundant life with Christ, those things, but we're also looking to the future and that he's coming back. So there's a future element to that as well.
Yeah, it's symbolic.
Symbolic, exactly. There's also the other view that often Lutheran and Presbyterian churches have. It's called consubstantiation. Do you know what that one is?
Yeah, so consubstantiation is that Christ is present when you're taking communion. And I think it's kind of like the halfway point between memorial and transubstantiation, right? Like they kind of believe that he's there, but they also believe that it's symbolic. It's confusing to me.
It's confusing to me too, but you're exactly right. And it's kind of like the idea that it's spiritually, Christ is kind of spiritually there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like you said.
Yeah.
And it's problematic for the same reasons transubstantiation is problematic.
Yeah.
Because they can't really define it very well.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of the difficulty, I think, with that view.
Right.
So one of the things that people used to argue about, and we kind of don't anymore, is that how often should you take communion? Should we take
That's
it?
a divisive issue right there.
It is in some churches. It is right there, right. So I have my trusty little sheet here because I photocopied a little thing from my a theology textbook. I have to put on my glasses real quick. So I just thought I'd read this to you and see what you think. So the names of communion listed in the Bible are the Lord's Supper, the Lord's Table, I forgot about that one, communion, and then it's the Greek word Eucharist, which Catholics really use, but that word just means Thanksgiving. And then the frequency. The early church in Acts chapter 2 did it every day. They met daily in homes and broke bread together, which seems to be they're taking communion every day. And then by Acts chapter 11, Acts chapter 20, they're doing it only weekly because they meet weekly.
Okay.
And they started to meet on Sunday, not Saturday, because they said that was the day of the resurrection, and then that was the day they were going to remember the death and resurrection of Christ. And then 1 Corinthians 11:26 says, do it as often as you do it, as often as you get together. So it seems like to me there's a little bit more weight on doing it every Sunday.
Okay.
But I don't like being legalistic about it either.
Yeah.
Like saying, oh, you really messed up and you sinned because you didn't take communion today.
Yeah.
I don't think that's helpful either.
Yeah.
At our church, before you joined our staff, we would have it at the back of the room every Sunday, and it was available for, you had to get up and go get it. Have you ever been in a church setting like that?
No, I don't think so. It's always been passed row to row.
Yeah. So we started doing that as an experiment at first, and then it lasted 10 years. And so what happened was we thought, let's just give this a shot. And here's what I noticed, that some people got up every Sunday and just did it. But then I saw some people, if they were incredibly moved by something, they got up. So the action of physically getting up, I thought was significant. Yeah. It just wasn't like, oh, it's handed to me and I'm going to do it because everybody's doing it. But I have to mentally decide, I need to do this. Yeah. And I thought that was important. Yeah. So one time I had Andrew Palau come and speak at our church, and when he was done speaking, I saw a young man in his 20s who had never, I don't think, ever really gotten up out of his chair to do it. Got right up. He was so, I think, moved by the message, he needed to go back to that table and reflect. So I thought in that sense that was good. But since this whole COVID thing, we decided, putting our fingers and stuff, you know what I mean, just a practical thing was a little bit too much for us to do at the time. And now I think things have changed. We're going to actually make some changes with that in the next couple months with communion. But I like doing it every Sunday for the reason that it is the great unifier of believers. Yeah. It's about Jesus, not my opinions about politics, masks, and those other things you mentioned. It's not about that. Yeah. Okay. I agree. Any last thoughts about communion?
I would ask, do you think that there's a difference in weight because we're doing it weekly? Like you were mentioning before, some people think if you do it monthly, it helps you to feel like it's more special than if you were to do it weekly, or do you think you can make it weighty every week?
I hope that it's weighty every week. Yeah. And I think right now we need to do it every week. Yeah. Right now, I think it's helpful. That's my opinion. But I can see where some people would be, hey, it's just old hat now.
Yeah.
It's just a routine that's meaningless to me. We don't want that to happen either.
Right.
So I guess you're right. We have to work hard to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, great. Hey, I'm Steve, and glad you're watching now and listening to the podcast, joined by Kaleea Honey, Taylor Paulson, and Roger Purdy, who's doing our filming. So thank you to those two, and grace and peace be with you.